Hello again, YouTube. Joseph D'Agostino from Joseph Vincent Photography and also josephdagastinofotography.com. I actually wanted to talk about this subject today and I just experienced it myself. I was trying to run the Fuji app through Wi-Fi, running 4K on the X-T2, which I'm filming this video on. And even though the lens is on manual focus, for some reason, when using the Wi-Fi and the Fuji app through the iPhone, it was hunting a little bit, and I don't know what the cause of that is. But again, it's kind of similar to the topic I wanted to talk about today with you. Is I think sometimes you just can't be afraid to fail at photography. I think you just have to try things, and you have to have. You can't work with a safety net. I think there's way too many photographers out there that are just nervous about what other people are going to think of them, what kind of gear that they're using at the time, if it's not the best stuff, if they don't have the right lenses, they don't have the right glass. I think they come up with a lot of excuses of that's what's holding them back. I think in order to be good at something, whether it be photography or videography or anything you try in life, I think in order to be good at something, you kind of have to be obsessed with it. I think there's a lot of fly-by-night photographers out there that are in it to make a quick buck, but they really don't embrace the art of it. For me, I could tell you, I try to shoot with any kind of gear I can get my hands on. I don't care if it's new, I don't care if it's film, I don't care if it's the best digital camera out there, regardless of what people may think that is. I try to take pictures every day. I try to create images every day. Are they going to be things that I post? Sometimes, sometimes not. Sometimes I'm just playing with color. Sometimes I'm playing with different lighting conditions. I'm not afraid to take pictures. I'm not afraid to fail. After you spend the money on a digital camera, your investment right from the beginning is kind of over. And what I mean by that is it's not film. You're not paying for your mistakes every day. You're not sending off a roll of film and, $30, $40 later with all your scans back from, a professional lab and seeing like, I kind of messed that one up. And, now it's costing you a lot of money. You're buying a camera, you're buying a lens, most likely a few lenses, and you're buying some digital cards. You're sticking them in your camera and you're learning your camera. I think there's a lot of people that they'll buy the camera, they'll put it on auto, and that's it. That's where they leave it. Just try things. You can't be afraid to fail. I'm new at video. I have no idea how to do video. I'm watching YouTube videos left and right, trying to learn how to do video blogging and learn how to run my X-T2. Right now it's on 4K. I don't know if it's going to come out good. My first video was horrible. It was horrible. I had my head chopped off. I said a lot, and I'm still doing that now, but it's okay. I'm out there, I'm trying. I think, again, with photography, you can't be afraid to try things. Learn your camera, get it out of auto. I know a lot of shooters will shoot aperture priority or time priority, shutter priority. That's fine, but learn how to work the ISO. Learn how to work your manual focus, learn how to work your autofocus, learn your tracking modes. What are they for? How do they work? How do they benefit you the best? Take your camera out night and day. Learn different lighting techniques. Learn how lighting affects all your cameras. I'm sorry, if you hear all that, I have two mini dachshunds and all they do is run around all day and chase each other. So I apologize for the sound. But point being, again, going back to that, just don't be afraid to fail at things. You fail, you get better. I don't think anybody that's become a true professional or has become really great at their craft has just done it from day one and has always done everything perfect. If they have, I don't know of them. I don't know of anybody that's ever done that. There's a million ways to fail in this business. There's a million ways to fail at photography. But every time you fail, you learn something new. What not to do, what doesn't work, things like that. He's down here right now. Let me grab this guy. Here he is. This is Rigatoni. Say hi. Okay, get out of here. Go do something. Get a job. Learn how to be great. Back to it. Some people also make the excuses of it's their gear. It's not your gear. It's you. It's you not knowing how to use your gear that you have. I've shot everything from old Canon AE1s, old Canon F1s, medium format, Pentax Phase 1, Pentax 6.7s, Mamiya 645s, film cameras, Phase 1 backs, Fuji systems, Canon systems, Canon 5D Mark III. Right now, I run Nikons and I run Fujis. I run a Fuji GFX, which you can check out my other video on that. I have the XT2 filming right now with the 35 f2 on. I run a Nikon D5 and I run a Nikon D810. And then again, here we go, old camera, Fuji X Pro 1. This camera really whet my appetite for the X Pro 2. And a lot of people have gone back and forth about, do I buy an X Pro 2? Do I buy an XT2? They're two different cameras. Yeah, they have the same results. They have the same sensor. They have the same film simulations. You can achieve the same results with both cameras, but it's just a different way to shoot. This mirrorless system and a rangefinder body is just really, really cool, and I think it just, that's the other dachshund, that's Cannoli. Yeah, we have Rigatoni and Cannoli. Cannoli's the older one, and he barks at everything. Rigatoni doesn't bark at anything. So I don't know if you're going to be able to hear me, and I can't stop the video because he's not going to stop anyway. Cannoli! Knock it off. That didn't work either. The mirrorless body on this rangefinder system, I don't know, it just brings out a creativity that I don't get with the XT2. It sounds so stupid. It's a camera, right? You look through it, you adjust your exposure triangle, you get your creative framing, and you take the picture. But I don't know, there's something that makes me see the world differently when I'm using a rangefinder system. It almost begs for me to shoot it as like a street photography camera. And that's another thing. Going back to not being afraid to fail. Have a camera with you. That's the first step to learning anything. I take a camera with me every day. I have a camera, I stick it in the car, I stick it in the console. I always have one on me. You never know when something great's gonna happen. And if you're not there to capture it, then you missed it. It could end up being an awesome shot. It can also teach you an awesome lesson. With this camera, I bring this thing everywhere. You know, it's a fun camera. It definitely is. It's got its quirks. A lot of people can, you know, really complain about this ISO dial lifting up to spin it. I will tell you the one thing that I used to do all the time when shooting in manual, I would adjust my shutter speed to where I really wanted it to be as far as like, you know, a safe shutter speed to capture motion or to make sure that I'm not going to get blurry images. And then I would adjust my ISO and I would adjust my aperture setting based off of the lighting condition. And I used to do that by just rocking the command dial like I can on the XT2 to adjust my ISO. You can't do it on this. So what they end up leaving you with is your shutter speed dial, which I keep on the T designation, so I can command the shutter speed with the command dial in the back. But if I want to adjust my aperture and see the, if I want to adjust my exposure and see the ISO, adjusting the exposure in real time, I have to lift up and I have to spin the dial. What ends up happening is when I'm trying to get the click, if I don't fully lifted up, now I just moved it off the T section, off the T designation, and now I'm at shutter speed 1 second. That's really going to blow out my exposure. If I turn it the other way, it's going to hit bulb. That's not going to work for me. I really wish that this center button that they have here, which is a locking dial, locked while it was on the T section, on the T designation. That would make it really easy for me to lock it on T, but still be able to lift up the ISO dial and spin it accordingly. The only kind of workaround that you have is obviously a lot of people will shoot the X Pro 1 or the X Pro 1 and the X Pro 2 on auto ISO. Now with the X Pro 1, I did notice I can assign my function button as ISO, so I could hit that and rock it around to get to where I wanted it to go. There's no option for that on this. There is a function button here, but it doesn't allow you to use ISO. What it allows you to do is it allows you to choose ISO 1, 2, or 3, which is whatever you set it for. So if it's auto ISO 1, auto ISO 2, and you can set those parameters to maximum and minimum ISO as well as shutter speeds. That's all well and good, but I really liked having full control over my ISO, and I don't with this camera. But a cool little thing I found out today, it's kind of neat. It's kind of like a reverse way that I used to do things where I would rock the ISO dial. So now what I can do is if I set my aperture, say f2, f2.8, wherever I want to be, I noticed that if I leave it on auto ISO and I half press the shutter button, while half pressing the shutter button, if I rock the command dial to adjust the shutter speed, I'll obviously see the exposure change, but what I'll also see is the ISO compensating for whatever shutter speed I'm using, if that makes sense to you. I'm sure it does, if everybody understands the exposure triangle that's listening to this. But again, lock the aperture where I want to choose it, and then what I'll do is leave it on auto ISO, and I'll do a half press, and I'll rock the rear command dial to adjust my shutter speed, and I'll see the exposure changing within the viewfinder, but I'll also see the ISO raising or lowering. It's just a little different than sticking a shutter speed on there and clicking a half press to see where the ISO is going to be, because immediately in the camera it'll read 6400 if that's where your ceiling is. You won't know what it really is until you hit the half press button, and then you'll see where it is, and then you're like, that's not right, I want to change it a little bit. I don't want to be that high, I want to be a little lower. If you half press and rock the rear, granted that you have the rear as your shutter speed and you don't have it reversed where the front is, I have the rear as the shutter speed. If I rock that for my shutter speed, and I could say I want to be at 1/125th, it'll show me where my ISO is. I just thought that was a cool little thing. There's probably a million people that know about it, but I just kind of discovered it today on my own. And I was like, that's great. I know this video kind of was a little bit all over the place. I know I was talking about passion for photography, not being afraid to fail, getting out there and just taking the shots, learning your camera, get out of auto, learn manual. It's not going to cost you any money, and I guarantee you're not going to break your camera. Just try different things, learn it. And if you don't know what it is, YouTube it, because I'm telling you, it's on YouTube. Everything's on YouTube. Don't use your camera as a crutch. I don't care if you have a $100 camera or if you have a $70,000, $8,000 camera. They all take pictures. Some take better pictures than others. That is true. But in the end, it's how you use your equipment is going to give you the images. There's a lot of people that have a lot of inspirational speeches for a lot of things. I don't claim to be that kind of person, but I'm just trying to give you some friendly advice as somebody who takes a lot of pictures. I take a picture every day. Probably take a lot of pictures every day. It annoys the hell out of my wife, I'm sure. But I always have a camera with me, and my excuse to her is when she's like, you with the camera again. She does it lovingly and jokingly, but I just said, hey, listen, I'm in charge of recording our family's life. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Everybody depends on me to have a camera, and come Christmas time or holidays or anything else, I'm always the one that has a catalog of images of all our family and our kids and our nieces and nephews and our grandparents and our mom and dad. So, you know, if you guys need an excuse to carry your camera every day, just use that one and I guarantee it'll work. But again, find something that works for you and have a good one. I will be doing a comparison video between these two cameras. Not that they're even comparable. This is a wonderful little camera. You can pick them up all day long for $300 to $400, depending on condition. Are they worth that? Yeah, they're worth that. They're worth $300 to $400 without a doubt. As long as you don't want to use continuous autofocus, because on this camera, it's garbage. Throw it out. But single point shooting, little street photography camera, it's fine. Handles high ISO really well. I liked it. I shot indoors at 3200, 6400. I shot it at nighttime. I have samples of that. I can stick them on this video. I don't know if I will or not. I'll probably do it on the comparison video. This camera, amazing. Is it an XT2? No, XT2 is a little faster. But what the XT2 lacks in, I don't want to say character, because it has character. It's like a vintage DSLR or a vintage SLR, almost like a Canon or an old an old Nikon or something like that. What that lacks in feeling, this kind of has. So they're not the same camera. They'll give you the same results, but they're not the same camera. I don't use the optical viewfinder. I know a lot of people like that. I use the EVF on it, but yeah, man, great camera, really great camera. I'm really happy I was able to grab this one. But I'll catch you on the next video, guys. These two dachshunds of mine are running around like crazy. So have a good one. Keep shooting.